I think I speak for everybody. Well, scoot over since John decided to move the chairs. Come on, you sit in the middle. We're just proud to know you. And this is a kind of a life that none of us. By the way, is that the same jacket you were wearing in this picture?
It's the same jacket I wear everywhere.
Okay. That is kind of a life you lived is not one with which many of us are familiar. So we want to ask you some questions. By the way, any of your family here that you could introduce to us?
Well, my son is here, Kyle.
Where are you, buddy? Stand up, Kyle. All right.
And I think I see his girlfriend, Becca.
Yeah, stand up.
She's a late arrival. And of course, my beautiful wife, Vicki.
Where is Vicki? Stand up, Vicki. And we all say thank you, Vicki, for that last song. Hey,
I'll never get out over that.
Yeah. This is John Bose, and I asked John up here. John's a fellow musician. By the way, John, while I've known Kerry for years, read his book and so forth, I learned so much from this documentary. I don't know if that's...
There's plenty that I learned from this documentary.
So I wanted you to come up, John, because you're a musician. You also know Kerry extremely well. Would you mind sort of emceeing this? And if you have a question, you raise your hand. John will repeat the question and translate it for Kerry or whatever. And then can you do that, John?
Yeah, I can do that. I've got a couple questions before we get started. I want to borrow that finger picking exercise book if you're done with it. But watching that, I noticed that there's a couple guitars that you had very early in the band, and then I didn't see them again throughout the rest of the production. And I'm particularly thinking of your Gibson Les Paul that you had when you were playing around Topeka.
Oh, gosh. Well, that guitar, several years ago when I was living in Covington, Georgia, Vicki went down to visit her folks who were living in South Georgia. So I had some time on my hands, and I had my airplane at that time. So I took off. I thought I'd go fly around a little bit. Well, it was a beautiful day, and one thing led to another, and I got farther and farther away, and pretty soon I thought, I'm just going to go on to Topeka. So I landed at Forbes Field. I rented a car. I drove to the music store where we used to hang out, Steam Music. And as I walked into Steam, they were hanging this guitar up on the wall as I walked in the door. And I looked at it, and he looked at me as if he'd just seen a ghost. And I said, Don, is that my Les Paul? And he says, yes, it just came in the store just this morning. The sheriff brought it by. It had been stolen. It was down in Albuquerque, New Mexico for a while. Went through all this. So it was a miraculous thing. I mean, this theme of this thing, miracles out of nowhere, it continues on and on and on in my life. That's not really miraculous in the sense, but when I think about it, I guess it is.
Well, just this week you told me another story. We were out at the studio Tuesday, and
a friend of mine from Atlanta who had just seen this film, he called me up and he said, hey, Kerry, do you want your guitar back? I said, well, my guitar back? Oh, by the way, this guy is not a guitar player. I said, Bob, what are you talking about? He says, the guitar that you wrote Dust in the Wind on. I said, what? Well, you have that guitar? He says, yeah, you gave it to me, remember? I gave away that guitar because I didn't think Dust in the Wind was going to be a hit. And so here he calls me back because of this film and says, it's on the way to you. So I get to have that guitar back.
Wow. Good. Well, keeping with the theme of miracles out of nowhere, I was on eBay last week.
John, put it up here.
And I found on eBay a Kerry LIvgren, one-of-a-kind, collectible that used to belong to you.
No, I used to have that stuff up here, and now it comes out of my face.
Oh. How does a guy live on $1 a day?
Very creatively. That's no lie. We got $1 a day to live off. But what you didn't hear was of the times that we went fishing in order to eat. I used to go up to Lake Perry at the dam and fish to eat. Walking along the roads to pick up pop bottles. In those days, you could take them and get 2 cents for them or something like that. 2 cents was a lot of money.
Well, the band house, you got 6 guys living in a band house. What's that kitchen look like?
The kitchen was actually boarded up. No lie. It got so foul that we just, we boarded over nailed boards on the walls. I don't know whatever happened to that kitchen, but I have pity on whoever opened that door.
Let's talk about your journey a little bit more. Besides the musical aspect of your journey, the spiritual aspect, you'd been writing from the very beginning about spiritual things in your life and seeking.
Yeah, that's one thing that the film here only touches on very briefly. But the spiritual aspect of the songs that I wrote, literally from our first album all the way to the present day, for that matter, we're very spiritual in nature. Why is that? I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. I don't know. It was something I was driven to do. I just felt this incredible pull on myself in that direction, and there was no escaping it. It came to a conclusion on July 25th, 1979, when I got down on my knees in a hotel room in Indianapolis, Indiana, and surrendered to Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's the short version. I have a very long version of that story, but that is
it
the
was
story.
quite a spiritual journey with ups and downs and around corners before that, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was kind of the, I used to carry around 2 suitcases on the road. One of them had my clothes, obviously, and toiletries and all that stuff. The other one was full of books. The roadies used to hate that thing. They had to lug it around. They called it the library. And it was full of every sort of spiritual book you can imagine. I went through all the major religions of the world, then through all the minor ones, then through some that nobody ever heard of, except me, and before I finally came to Christ. And that was a full circle, by the way. I started out in the Lutheran church here in Topeka. I was raised up in the Lutheran church. I went through confirmation. That word is supposed to mean confirmed, but I was not confirmed. I embarked on this chasing after the wind until I finally came home.
Okay, any questions from out there? Yes. Were all of the members of Kansas Christians?
3 of us are, to my knowledge. Phil Ehart, the drummer, and Dave Hope, the bass player. I was the first one to get saved. After I came to Christ, about a year later, Dave, our bass player, came to Christ. I don't know when Phil made the decision, but he is very clearly a Christian now. He's of the Baptist persuasion. Dave is actually an Anglican priest. Can you believe that? So that's the 3 of us are. Steve Walsh, Robbie Steinhardt, and Rich Williams. Although on one occasion, the reason I say I don't like to second guess God, number one, but on one occasion, Rich said to me, Kerry, I believe exactly as you do. Now, I don't know what he meant by that, but I would take that to mean, okay, I'm a Christian. But I don't know where Rich's heart is now, but I continue on a daily basis to pray for those guys.
Well, I'm sure the record label was really excited when you wanted to write songs about Jesus.
You know, that was a real eye opener. Like I say, from the beginning, all my songs were very spiritual. I mean, Carry On Wayward Son, Surely Heaven Waits for You, Dust in the Wind, they were very spiritual, but they weren't specific. But the minute my songs had the faintest aroma of Christ to them, boy, did the sparks start to fly. I remember my first solo album. I walked into Don Kirshner's office and played the entire album for him, and he just went, And that was all he said. And then by the time I did my second solo album, they were in the process of dropping me as a solo artist. And that began the process of my exit from the band. I never really totally left Kansas because I'm not in the band now. I played with them last week in Kansas City. But I had to get away from them after a while. Nobody can keep up this kind of pace that you see in this film. The pace of my life during those years was just exhausting. And when I became a Christian, I realized this is not my life. This is not what I want my life to be about. And that's when I had to make some changes.
Well, Kerry, you mentioned your first solo album, Seeds of Change, and you also were writing a autobiography at the same time by the same title. But I noticed on the album, a couple of the songs, you went out and got Ronnie James Dio, the lead singer for Black Sabbath, to sing on your Christian solo album. Could you talk about Ronnie a little bit?
Well, I figured if the sparks were going to fly, I'll give him something to talk about. Ronnie James Dio was the right vocalist for those two songs that he sang on my album. Hands down. He sang them like nobody else could. And I wanted to not only take the lead singer from Black Sabbath, put him in a Christian context, and have him sing his heart out. I wanted to witness to him. And boy, did I get a chance. I sat outside the studio for, about an hour and a half one night, he and I in my car, and I just let him have it with both barrels over and over and over. And finally he says, Kerry, stop. Stop. If you don't stop, I'm going to end up believing like you do. I said, well, Ronnie, that's the whole point. But he always was very respectful of me. He spoke very highly of me, as I do of him as an individual. I don't believe he actually believed what he was singing about in Black Sabbath. In fact, he told me it was just a big publicity thing with them. So, but to this day, I still get asked that question, John.
Another question. Yes. What was your inspiration for Point of No Return, and when did that come out?
Well, it came out in 1977. You mean an inspiration for the whole album, or
for the title, or for the whole album?
Basically, the song itself.
Well, that was not my song. That was Steve Walsh's song. He wrote the song as a response to what we had named the album. He thought, "Wow, what a great title!" So he went home and wrote the song.
And when did that come out, that album? Do you remember?
1977.
77.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, the question is, and this is being taped, so it's for many people who want to hear it. The question is, could you update us on what you're doing now? You read the newspaper, and it mentions, you've been on a 20-year sort of a deal. So what are you doing now?
Well, I get up in the morning and I let our dog out, and I feed the cattle. No, actually, Kyle does that. I'm joking. I work in my studio every day. I've been working on several different projects over the years. I've actually released more albums than I can even count. But I'm currently, what you're asking about, I believe, is my cantata, which I've been, now, all those songs, like for Leftover, for instance, where I went down that night, wrote a song, learned it the next day. Next day I wrote another song that night, learned it the next day. This song I've been writing for 35 years. 35 years. That's got to set some sort of record. I say writing it, I haven't been constantly writing it for 35 years. I've been working on it over a period of 35 years. But it's a cantata on the resurrection of Lazarus from John chapter 11. It started out as a whole, I was just setting the scriptures to music. And then it snowballed into this big production where I use what Verd Holsing used to call sanctified imagination. I would take the scriptures and I would wonder, what was Lazarus thinking at the time that Christ called him out of the tomb? What was going through his mind? And then I set that to music, always with the idea that it had to be totally consistent with what the scriptures say. So that's what's been taken, and then I have to orchestrate the whole thing. It's not a rock and roll piece by any stretch. It's an orchestral piece, and I have to orchestrate it, which I continually am refining and tweaking. And so if I live long enough, eventually maybe someone will hear it.
Yes, right down front.
I noticed in the documentary that you wore a crucifix and cross. Was there a story behind that, or where it came from, why you wore it?
The question is, I saw in the documentary you were wearing a crucifix or a cross. Is there a story behind that?
This is going to get very theological. Like I told you, I became a Christian on July 25th, 1979 at 3 o'clock in the morning. But I don't know for sure if I was not already a Christian before that. If I was, it was very latent. It was very suppressed. I wasn't living the life of a Christian by any stretch of your imagination. So if I got saved on July 25th, then that's the moment I became a Christian. Why was I wearing a cross all those years before that? I don't know. I was compelled to wear this cross. I never went anywhere without it. I had it on stage all the time. And I don't know what was behind that thought.
That's a great question, because the religions you were into had nothing to do with the cross.
No, they didn't. In fact, they ranged from contempt for the cross. The kindest thing I ever heard, well, one of the gurus that I followed, he had somewhat high regard for Jesus as a teacher. But then the thing that ate away at me was, well, if you have such high regard for him as a teacher, how come you don't follow any of his teachings? Which this man didn't. So that was one of the many, many things that ate away at me. But I can't answer that question, ma'am. I don't know what in the world was going through my mind, except that I felt compelled to wear that cross.
Question in the middle. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, and to further that thought, the lyrics that I wrote, if you read the lyrics to all my songs, they read like a roadmap of a person who's searching till he eventually finds. And maybe I was wearing that cross because I somewhere deep inside me, I knew where I was going to end up.
Cool.
I was just wondering, you always played in...
Don, would you speak into the mic? Thanks.
I was just wondering why you always played in western Kansas. Why did the bus always go west? And I mean, because you could have gone east. And what was it like when you played before 100,000 people?
Well, you know that song, The Wall? There was a great wall between us on the east side. We could go west, but we couldn't get past that wall. I don't know. I don't recall. I recall one occasion where we played in Kansas City. That was it. And that was with the second version of Kansas, with not this band here. So we never went that direction until we became a recording act. Of course, then we played all over the world. So that's not an explanation for that. But I don't know why that was. But we had to go west, and we played in every little. We played in Goff, Goff. We played in Gypsum, Kansas, Gypsum. I mean, how in the world? And that's miraculous. That's just.
So the flip side of his question was, what did it feel like to play in front of 100,000 people? Can you describe that?
It's very electrifying. It's very, the whole time you're on stage playing, I'm thinking, my gosh, I cannot believe that we're standing here in front of this crowd, and this crowd is just going crazy. One of the things this is, people ask me sometimes, what concert do you remember above any other? There was one concert where it was shortly after Dust in the Wind became a hit. We were playing in Philadelphia at the Spectrum, which you may be familiar with if you're a basketball.
NBA.
Yeah, right.
Philadelphia 76ers.
Anyway,
Go ahead. Yeah.
we're playing at a sold-out show at the Spectrum, and we walk out on stage, and this crowd was roaring so loud that we couldn't play. We couldn't even play. We couldn't hear ourselves play. We stopped playing and just stood there, and they kept applauding and kept going and kept going and kept going, and it was so humbling. In fact, that's one of the things that made me. It renewed the urgency with which I was seeking to find God, because I thought, my God, these people they're treating me as if I'm a god, and I am clearly not even close. And it ate away at me, and it made me search all that much far harder. So it's a weird thing to be in front of audiences. It really is.
Question over here. Yes.
So that the time when your conversion experience, what time was that going to the music? Right after Dust in the Wind?
Oh, yeah. Fit your conversion experience date, the 3 a.m. on June, whatever it was. Fit that into your songs. Was it right after Dust in the Wind? Was it where was it in your songwriting?
We had just finished recording Monolith, the album called Monolith, and I was scraping the bottom of the barrel. I mean, all the major religions, all the minor ones. Remember, I made that remark already. And one of our engineers gave me this book. He said, "Kerry, you need to read this book. It's called the Urantia book." I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "Well, it's this really weird. It's like the history of the planet Earth, the history of the universe, answers to every question you ever had."
It's a big, thick book, isn't it?
Oh yeah, big, thick volume. Well, I started reading this book. Vicky can attest to this. In the middle of the night. Well, I was so engrossed in this book, I could not stop reading it, and I would wake Vicky up at 3 o'clock in the morning. "Honey, you gotta listen to this." She'd go to sleep, will you? I couldn't put it down, and I kept on reading this book. And then I got to the book is divided into literally the history of the planet Earth, which the authors call Urantia. By the way, the authors they're not listed. There are no authors listed. It's a totally mysterious book. But anyway, the history of the planet Earth, which I read, which was fascinating. And then the last part of the book is the life and times of Jesus Christ. I got to that part, I thought, wow, this is going toward Jesus? Well, I started reading the Gospels according to Urantia, and it was absolutely fascinating. It just grabbed me, and I thought, man, this is incredible. And it's inspired some of the songs that I wrote for this Monolith album. Well, shortly after that, just when I became a Christian, but I desperately wanted to lead someone else to Urantia, because the whole time I was a Urantian, I never met another one. As far as I knew, I was it. And I desperately wanted some form of fellowship. And the lead guitarist of the band that was opening for us, they were called, pardon me, I had a stroke. They were called LaRue. Louisiana's LaRue. There we go. Okay. And their guitar player had long blonde hair, as I did. He was their lead guitar player. I was our lead guitar player. we had so much in common. And as we were touring, he began to talk with me a lot, and I talked with him a lot. We had breakfast together every day. And eventually, our conversation led to spiritual things. I thought, okay, here's my opening. I'm going to lead this guy to Urantia. Well, I started talking about Urantia, and Jeff says, hey, you need to come ride with us on our bus. So I gave up our seat on our jet to ride with him on their bus. Well, this is a very curious bus. The front section of the bus, if the bus is this long, they had boarded up the back of the bus. And that was where Jeff rode. And I didn't realize at the time, but Jeff was a Christian. So they had the Christian section and then everybody else in the front of the bus. No lie. So I went back in the Christian section with Jeff, and we sat down, and I opened my Urantia book, and he opened up his Bible, and we began to go back and forth and back and forth. Now, I was a pretty good debater. I could debate my way out of almost any situation. And I was fairly proud of that. But I noticed this weird phenomenon. When I said something to Jeff, it was well thought out. I thought it was an impregnable argument. But Jeff's words, when he read from the Bible, it was like he was sticking an ice pick and sticking to my heart. His words went right. My words were head words. His words were heart words. And that's what I went back to the hotel room after a few months of this, and I had all I could stand, and I sat. They left the tour, and he gave me this little book by Hal Lindsey called "The Liberation of Planet Earth." Yeah. Not even one of his better known.
It wasn't the late great Planet Earth. It was the Liberation.
No, the Liberation of Planet Earth,
yeah.
Which is a treatise on Romans.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what passage I read in that book, but it was the ultimate ice pick. And I got down, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I got down on my knees, and I used the word surrendered, because that's what I did. I gave myself up. I surrendered to Jesus because I was so driven to find God. At the same time, I was so repulsed by the cross and Christianity, and I didn't want to become a Christian. I just didn't want to do that. But I gave up. And when I got up off my knees, I was a new man.
Wow.
Wow. Kerry. Jim. We got a question back here, Jim.
Huh?
Question back here.
Question back here.
Yeah, can you explain how it is you transition between inspiration and composition, writing a song, what happens in the middle, in between?
That has always been, oh gosh, that's an impossible question to answer. I don't know how, I don't know how I write songs. I don't know where they come from. I don't know how it happens. Trying to analyze how you write a song is exactly like trying to analyze the exact moment that you fall asleep. You can't do it, because if you're awake, you can't be asleep at the same time. You can't do that. I made the comment in the documentary that it beams in. I told you about that cantata. I don't recall writing any of it. I have no memory of having written this music. I listened to this music, I thought, wow, where did this come from? I think that about some of these Kansas songs. Where did this come from? It just happens. It's just some sort of gift that the Lord gives you, or I don't know any other way to put it. I don't know how it happens.
John, let's take one more question. I guess we're way over time, so
Okay.
you pick it out.
You just mentioned your stroke, so I just want to say it's great to have you here.
You don't know how great it is to be here.
Just the question, I assume you do reminisce. If you could go back to one moment through your career, is there one moment that always sticks out or that you wish you could go back to?
The moment that I met my wife.
Big points on that one. Wow. So, Vicki, We love you. We're glad you're here. Thank you all for coming. Kerry, what a wonderful documentary. Thank you all. You've stayed. It's overtime. Feel free to come up and greet them afterwards, but thank you for coming. You're dismissed.